What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I got some news. There's some news regarding the Dolphins that I'd like to talk about. So I'm gonna go ahead and get right into it. The first thing I want to mention though is the Dolphins had a Pro Bowl defensive end in for a visit today. That would be Melvin Ingram, visits Miami. Three-time Pro Bowler with the Chargers. Miami Dolphins reportedly hosted free agent pass rusher Melvin Ingram for a visit Monday, according to Adam H. Beasley of the Miami Herald. The 32-year-old has spent his entire 9-year career with the Chargers since being selected in the first round of the 2021 NFL Draft. He earned 3 straight Pro Bowl selections from 17 and 19. In 2020, Ingram was limited by a knee injury that cost him 9 games and led to 2 different trips to injured reserve. Though the veteran was held without a sack last season, he has 49 in his career, including 43 from 15 to 19. He has proved he can be an impact player defensively if he can return to full strength. Okay, so let me talk about this. Ultimately, I wouldn't do it, but let me get into the nitty gritty of it. So, right, because a lot of Dolphins fans, and this is kind of what I'm talking about when I say, like, people are like dogs with squirrels, right? And they're like, ooh, squirrel, ooh, shiny object, ooh, this, right? Like calm the fuck down, okay? You got to think about these things thoroughly from the big picture. Okay, so yes, Melvin Ingram has been a good pass rusher in his career, and theoretically on paper, tie him in with Emmanuel Ogbah and Jalen Phillips and, Strawbridge, one of your previous draft picks, right? And some of these other guys that you got in there, right? Like, pair him in there with those guys as maybe a rotational player, gets in there, and, this defense could be scary, right? Like, okay, maybe that's true, but and so that's the pros, right? That's the pro side, is really just that one thing. He potentially has the potential to add a significant element to this pass rush, and we definitely need that, right? Jalen Phillips is looking to be a big part of that, but he has serious concussion injury history. He's going to be a rookie. Ogbah did pretty well last season, but really still not, he didn't break double digits. He did get 9 sacks, and so that's good. Is he going to be able to do that again? I hope so. We need him to, for sure. He's got to stay healthy. Right? And then, so, then what else? Is Strawbridge gonna, take a step up? Blah, 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 blah. So theoretically, he could definitely increase, and that is an area of need, without question. That would 100% help the defense. But here's why I wouldn't do it. There's a few reasons. He's 32. He's got injury, some injury history now at this point, right? And so those things tie together, right? Because a 32-year-old player is not going to get younger, right? Their body's not going to get younger. It's not going to all of a sudden like magically lose the wear and tear on the tires and stuff like that, right? So he's going to still be 32 and he's going to only get older, right? And so injuries are more likely to happen. And this is why the same basic principle is why I don't like taking players who have major injury concerns this early in their careers. Now I'm referring to players like Jalen Phillips and Tua, for example, right? This is why the same principle, because if they have significant injury concerns this early in their career, boy, oh boy, well, that's why you can't expect them to have a long career with your team, because, by the time they get into their mid-20s, these dudes are going to be broken. Hopefully not, but that's the concern, right? And now it depends on the injuries as well, but like Tua's had some pretty major injuries to his lower legs, and that scares the shit out of me. Jalen Phillips has had to medically retire from UCLA because of concussions. Okay, concussions are one of the worst injuries you can get in the league. I know, people brush it under the rug and downplay the shit out of it, and the league doesn't really give a fuck. They obviously hid it for years and years. So, I get there's that element, but it literally is one of the most serious injuries you can get from playing football, especially since it's so recurring. So that shit scares the fuck out of me, and that's why I don't like taking players like that. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think the Dolphins' plans are going to work, because not only do they reach on players, but then they love to take injury-prone players. They also love to take, former first rounders from other teams and so on and so forth. And while, he's been pretty good, I mean, he hasn't been, I wouldn't say necessarily he's a Hall of Famer, but he's had a good career. He's been to the Pro Bowl 3 times, but he's 32 and he has injury, concerns now at this point, right? And so is he going to give you that? Are you going to get that? And then what are you going to have to pay him? Right? And so you're probably going to have to pay him a decent chunk of change, because he does come with that pedigree, and because, him and his agent know you need more fucking pass rush help. You weren't very good at it last year, right? So, like, what are you going to have to pay him? I don't think paying him is worth it. I don't think that money is going to be worth it. That's me, right? And so, they could do it and everybody could get super hyped and they'll pay him, 6, 7, 8 million, whatever it is, for a 1-year deal. And he'll flub because he's 32 with an injury history, and then people will be like, oh, he sucked, blah, 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 and fucking get rid of him, and then fucking, whatever, and then he'll be gone next year. Okay, dude, but when you're constantly doing those kinds of things, which they do all the time, you're going to have massive, massive turnover on your roster constantly, and that is not good. That does not provide stability, continuity, and chemistry on your roster. Real quick side note, I want to say that there was, I've watched some and read, articles, but watch videos on, people starting to way too early project the roster. And bro, with some of these people's roster projections, the Dolphins are going to be cutting probably another 2 or 3 of their drafted players, right? Michael Dieter could be one. So for me, I actually have, I think, 5 players in total that the Dolphins have drafted over the past 3 years under Brian Flores and Chris Greer that I could see possibly being cut. That is Michael Dieter, Malcolm Perry, Jason Strourbridge. So Michael Dieter from the 2019 draft, Strourbridge and Perry. Honestly, they do even have another long snapper, so there could be a surprise Blake Ferguson cut. So maybe even 6. I don't think that one is as likely, but it's possible. Anyway, so back to the 5 though. Strourbridge and Perry from the 2020 draft, because where does Perry even fit in? There's too much depth both at wide receiver and running back. I think he could be the odd man out, especially if Garrett Dokes is on my list of the 5. But if they keep Garrett Dokes, then that makes Malcolm Perry's position even less likely, because they're gonna have Gaskin. Malcolm Brown, most likely. I think it'll be probably most likely Gaskin, Malcolm Brown. I think Dokes probably because of his size and everything, and they want to try and have that big back for like short yardage and stuff, and somebody they can develop behind a Malcolm Brown who is also that. But in case Malcolm Brown goes down, and then they're gonna want they're probably gonna keep 4. And then they're gonna want another one in the mold of Gaskin. So either Ahmad Ahmed or it could be Perry. It could be Perry, right? Or Patrick Laird, one of those guys. But Malcolm Perry could be cut from this team. And then I have, Garrett Dokes and Larnell Coleman on that list. So, 5 players that could that they've drafted over the past 3 years that could be cut, right? And so if they keep Perry, then maybe Dokes goes. If they keep Dokes, then maybe Perry goes. So we'll see. But that's pretty terrible. And, I watched, I don't know if you guys watched on the Phins side with Kat and Paul, but I watch their stuff pretty regularly. Doug's stuff, K-Flexin, they're some of the guys I watch the most. Tobin and Leroy, I don't know if you guys know them. Those are the shows that I watch the most. But anyway, but according to Paul, he thinks Dieter's going to be cut, which would be pretty astounding to me. One thing he said, though, that I thought was really funny is because they actually were talking about Jakeem Grant, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about him in a minute with the next story that I want to discuss. But they were talking about Jakeem Grant, and by the way, I'm a big Jakeem Grant fan, but they were talking about him and saying, you know, he's obviously great on special teams and really electric there, but he doesn't add a whole lot to the offense. I actually kind of disagree. You do got to have, you know, a good, well-rounded team. You know, like all the pieces have to be working together for players like him to be able to operate. You know, because but the same thing goes for, you know, Albert Wilson and Jaylen Waddle. For guys like that, you have to have the rest of the quarterback and the offensive line. You got to have some semblance of a run game, because what those guys rely on a lot is getting the ball in open space and then doing something with it afterward, right? As opposed to, you know, already having 30, 40, 50 yards at the point of catch, right? So instead of deep passes, deep balls, right? But I think he does actually provide a lot. He's shown not only the speed and the elusiveness, the big play ability, but he has actually shown some ability to go up and get it. People mention, you know, some of his drops. I think some of his drops last year were actually just because Tua overthrew him, and I think that's pretty clear. But I do like that he seems to have a really good rapport with, like they practice a lot and they throw a lot together and stuff, Tua and him. And I like that because I really like Jakeem Grant. And so it's actually really difficult to determine whether or not he's going to be on this roster. But I think, and we'll get more into that in a minute. But anyway, they were talking about him and how he's been here for 6 years and he has to step up and you know, blah, 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 to earn his spot. And he could be somebody that ends up being cut. And that's true. It is possible that he ends up being cut. I think that would be a mistake, especially because if they do that, then it signals the next story, which I'm going to get into in a minute. But anyway, going back to that, I know I keep doing that a lot, but they were talking about him, and then Paul said that Dieter is kind of in the same position as Jakeem Grant. But what he said after that caught me up, because he was like, Jakeem Grant's been in the league for 6 years, right? He was like, you know, and I even think that he was part of the same draft class. Now, I mean, look, people make mistakes. Obviously, it was a mistake. Like, I'm not, you know, but how do you make that mistake? He was the third round pick from the 2019 draft. Brian Flores and Chris Greer drafted him. He didn't get drafted 6 years ago. He hasn't been in the league 6 years, 6 years, right? The problem is he's only been in the league for a couple years, but he's been hot garbage throughout that time so far, right? And so it is a real possibility with all these other players that they have on the offensive line that he could be a cap casualty. But that would be so bad. I've already talked about how bad the drafts are. I actually made up a list. And that, so I have let me see here. I'll even show it to you real quick. So I made up this list, right? And then this is for the games that I predicted for the schedule. I'll just show you that real quick too. I predicted the Dolphins to go 6-11. I know everybody hates that, but I'm going to see. And then, I know there's double wins, double losses and stuff like that. That's because on the Tobin and Leroy show, Robbie, one of the guys that's on that show, he actually agreed with me that they were going to go 6-11. We almost had the exact same picks as well. So I'm really curious to see, one, if we're right that they go 6-11, and then two, how close me and him are. So there's that. But here's the draft classes. So these are the three draft classes under Brian Flores and Chris Greer. 6 picks from 2019, 11 picks from 2020, and then, 7 picks from 2021. As you can see, there are already 2 players from that 2019 draft that have been cut, Isaiah Prince and Chandler Cox. 1 pick from the 2020 draft, which is Curtis Weaver. Okay, so if they cut Michael Dieter, if that happens, then they will have already cut, let me come back to me, they will have already cut 50% of their 2019 draft class. That would be pretty astounding and not good. That's not good. I mean, that, you know, so, and the way that these position battles are, you know, shaking out, I see a real possibility for at least probably 2 or 3 more draft picks of theirs to be cut, which would be astounding. So they'd be down to 50%. If that happens, they'd be down to 50%, and they would have. So then look at that draft class. If that were to happen, it hasn't happened yet, but if it does, then they would have Christian Wilkins, which to me, to this point, I mean, there's a lot of Dolphins fans that love him. I wasn't a big fan of the pick to begin with. You know, you'd go back and watch my videos, you know, from that draft. But it is what it is. But he's been underwhelming to me. He's just been okay. He needs to do a lot better than what he has done to really justify being taken, you know, in that top spot in the first round, right? In that whatever pick. I think it was early teens or something like that. Anyway, whatever. I can't remember. Maybe even higher. Maybe he was like 8 or something. I don't remember. Whatever. Point is, first round pick, first round you know, expectations, etc., etc. He's been underwhelming. But then, and then of course, as we know, our second round pick was Josh Rosen. So already then you know, you look at that and like, wow, okay, the draft is not really shaking up. You have an underwhelming first round pick. Your second round pick was a former first round pick of another team that was a complete fail after you traded for him. If you then cut your third round pick from that year, Michael Dieter, after he proved to be trash, which in my opinion, he's been pretty much trash since then, that's pretty astounding for your first 3 rounds in that draft. And it doesn't say very much good about your ability to draft and, you know, develop. But then you have Andrew Van Ginkel, he's been, for a 5th round pick, probably a little bit above what a 5th round pick you would expect from a 5th round pick. So I think he's exceeding his expectations by a little bit, not a lot, because he's just been all right to this point. He definitely also needs to take a significant step forward. But then your 6th round pick, Isaiah Prince, is gone. Your 7th round pick, Chandler Cox, is gone, and Myles Gaskin is definitely way exceeding his 7th round status. That is fair. But if you look at the draft class as a whole, underwhelming first round pick, complete fail second round pick, complete fail third round pick if you cut Michael Dieter, a slightly above average 5th round pick, complete fail 6th and 7th round picks, and then a really good you know, well above average 7th round pick, or well above expectation 7th round pick, a great 7th round pick, however you want to phrase it, right? Overall, the draft class sucks. Even though Myles Gaskin is really good for a 7th round pick, the rest of the draft class fucking sucks, right? So you get the point. Anyway, so if that happens, man, I mean, that's just bad. And then let alone, again, they could still end up cutting another, you know, on top of that, 1 or 2 other players from, you know, the 2020 or even the 2021 draft. And if they cut a player from the 2021 draft this season, at any time during the season, that will be 3 straight years in a row, 3 years in a row, where they cut one of their rookie players that they drafted. Again, says, I mean, they already did it the first 2 years, right? In 2019, they cut Isaiah Prince during that season. In 2020, they cut Curtis Weaver last year. And they also cut Chandler Cox last year, right? If they cut, you know, a Larnell Coleman or a Garrett Dokes, and at the very least don't bring them back onto the practice squad, if they end up going somewhere else or they just don't sign them again, it's not good. Anyway, so that's enough spending time on all that. Let me go ahead and move into the next thing, which I think is massively important and is going to play to something that I have already said a number of times. So the title of this comes from Dolphins Nation. Dolphins coach makes clear indication whether or not the team will use Jaylen Waddle in the return game. Now, before I get into this, let me make it abundantly clear, if I haven't already, I absolutely would not do it. And especially because he literally got hurt last year, his ankle, on special teams. I wouldn't do it. He's your first round pick, bro. And this guy you're bringing in supposedly because he alone is going to transform this offense and all of a sudden make Tua fucking, light things up. If you think that's going to be the case, you should not want them to use him in the return game. Now, again, if they get rid of Jakeem Grant, they are absolutely using him in the return game. I can't imagine they would get rid of Jakeem Grant, but that's why it does make it difficult to determine whether they are going to do it. I wouldn't put it past them because they've made so many stupid decisions, but that one's pretty fucking dumb because he does have that electric ability in the return game. You wouldn't have to use your first round pick as a returner, which would be smart. And he also is one of Tua's favorite receivers, it seems. Not only last year, he seemed to go to him quite a bit, but it's well documented that they fucking have been, throwing together for quite some time, right? And so, and then, the Dolphins just put out a video today about, him and, or them two throwing together, right? So all of those factors taken into account, and he actually doesn't, what his cap value is certainly worth it for all of that. What he's going to give you, he's certainly worth the money. And then of course, I have a slight bias as well because I'm a fan of his, I think, but I'm a fan of his because I think he's shown the ability in the and reasonable production for the pay, and also because I love his scrappiness and the fact that he is an undersized guy that just fucking fights and plays bigger than he is, right? So I love that. Anyway, so getting rid of him would absolutely be a giant mistake. But let's look into this article. So after signing rookie Jaylen Waddle to his rookie contract, the Miami Dolphins front office has signified its plan to use the promising wide receiver in various situations, including the return game. Because the coaches actually had a media availability today, so they had interviews today, and special teams coach Danny Crossman had this to say. Coming from Joe Shad, Dolphins special teams coach Danny Crossman says, "You can't have fear in using top picks like Jaylen Waddle in the return game. Can change a game." Yes, you can, bro. You totally can. You absolutely can. Because if he goes out there and he gets hurt, and let's say he tears an ACL or an Achilles or, something significant, bro, you're going to lose him for the entire year. It's terrible. It's a terrible decision. It's a potentially catastrophic decision, especially when you have a Jakeem Grant who is also a game changer. I mean, he's done it. He did it last year. He returned a fucking punt for a touchdown. He's almost guaranteed to do it like at least once or twice a year. So yes, not to mention you have plenty of other guys: Lynn Bowden, Malcolm Perry, Noah Igbinoghene. I mean, if you don't want to have fear in using a first round pick, use him. He hasn't proven fucking all that useful as a corner yet, so use him. Yes, you can have fear in using Jaylen Waddle, who's an undersized guy. He's a small guy that has some injury history. And so does Jakeem Grant. The difference is Jakeem Grant was like a 5th round pick. He was a 5th round pick. Jaylen Waddle is a fucking 1st round pick. And Jaylen Waddle is supposed to be the guy that transforms Tua and this offense. Jakeem Grant is not expected to do that. He's supposed to be, I would think expected to be a significant piece, but he's not your 1st round pick this year. That is anyway, there's a huge difference. Anyway, the 6th overall pick in the 2021 NFL draft is no stranger No stranger to returning kicks and punts. During his freshman year at the University of Alabama, he returned 16 punts for a total of 233 yards and a touchdown. In the following season, Waddle returned 20 punts for an average of 24.4 yards per game and a touchdown. He also returned 5 kicks for 35 yards and another touchdown. And that's great, but that's also college. It's different in the NFL, way different level of competition, and you don't want to do that. I'm telling you, if they do that, and I've been saying this, if they do that, and especially if they cut Jakeem Grant, that is a huge signifier that they intend to use him. I mean, maybe they'll use him there regardless. And maybe they use him there in preseason, and he gets hurt there in preseason, right? Like, disaster waiting to happen. But I'm telling you, man, and you know, obviously I don't want it to happen. I hope it doesn't happen. I wish it doesn't happen. But if they use him there and they get him hurt, and there's a high probability of it, there is. It literally just happened to him last year. Whichever way the coaching staff plans on playing him, Waddle already appears comfortable connecting with his teammates. Additionally, he played alongside Tua back in college, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So, man, I think it's a massive disaster if they do that. But it does appear like, you know, based off of all indications, I mean, it started with them talking him up and hyping him up at that, right? Being like, oh, not only is he a great receiver, but like they made a point of pointing out that he's great in the return game. And now with these comments, you know, coming out at this point, like, it just keeps pointing in the direction, right? The information that we're getting keeps pointing in the direction that they're going to use him there. I think the final thing, and the thing, to me, the nail in the coffin, the writing in stone, the move that would signify that would be getting rid of Jakeem Grant. If they do that, Dolphins fans should be fucking terrified that Jaylen Waddle's going to get hurt playing special teams. And that's what I got to say about it, man. So those are the things that I wanted to discuss. Some pretty significant topics, I would think. You know, the potential of Melvin Ingram coming in and the potential of Jaylen Waddle being used on special teams. And, of course, a little bit of, you know, some of the additional stuff thrown in there about, you know, the 53-man roster predictions from people and, you know, potentially having, you know, a few more of their draft picks cut. Which, again, I mean, like, it blows my mind, man. It blows my mind that, especially because these guys say that they want to build through the draft and that, you know, it's all on these guys that we drafted, right? But then people will want to praise him for being super cutthroat the way that he is, then also on the other hand say that he's not trying to emulate the Patriots, which he 100% is. I mean, it's unreasonable to say that Brian Flores is not trying to copy the Patriots at this point. He's brought over too many players, too many coaches. His defense is you know, a replica of that. And like it gets talked about all the fucking time. Like it literally, besides him officially coming out and saying I'm trying to be the Patriots, it really doesn't get any closer. Anyway, so, you know, but people will praise him for being so cutthroat and whatever, and then say that, and then, you know, so they'll support him. They'll support him when he goes and, you know, realizes that spending, you know, big on those players in free agency was a mistake and cut him after 1 year, even though we spent over 150 million to sign those players. You know, or, you know, we drafted these guys, but hey, fuck it, they didn't prove to fucking develop to the level that we wanted them to in their first or second year with the team, so we're cutting them. But that's on you, dude. You're supposed to develop them. Like, it's mind-blowing how people support the things that they do simultaneously. Like how can you support his cutthroat fucking habits and say that they're not big spenders in free agency and you know that they do things right in free agency, or, you know, look at his habits and how they've already shown a pattern to cut their own draft picks, even rookies, you know, and then say fucking that they're good at developing or that they're good at drafting and player evaluation. It just blows my mind. But we'll see, man. I mean, like I said, in my mind, this is unquestionably the year that makes it or breaks it. Not just with the expectations, but you also throw in the Stephen Ross stuff about how he changes his organization makeup and power structure every 3 to 3.5 years, fires his coaches at that time. He's getting older and more desperate, right? Like, you look at all these different things, man, and with the season they had last year, winning 10 games, the expectation that they're gonna go to the playoffs, right? Like, some people are even saying that they have to go win the Super Bowl. I mean, it's ridiculous, dude. But I'm telling you, bro, if they don't live up to it, and we'll see, because not only will we see this season and whether or not they meet those expectations, but we're also going to see how their draft classes shape up even more. Because if they do end up cutting, I mean, I have potentially 5 guys. They're not going to cut all 5 of those players, right? I don't think they're going to cut Malcolm Perry and Garrett Dokes. But they're all on my list of potentials. And in fact, I had 6 altogether. But if they cut 2 or 3 more players from their draft classes, and especially if they then cut another one of their rookies, 3 straight years cutting one of their rookies, bro, I mean, you wouldn't be able to, like, it would be astounding to me if people said that they continued to argue that they were good at drafting, player evaluation, and player development. Because it wouldn't be, I mean, I'm stunned and speechless because I'm imagining talking to another human being that would be defending that argument. And what do you say to that? Like, what do you say to that? Because it's just sheer stupidity. Anyway, but it doesn't matter, because either, and I've said this a bunch of times, and this will be my final comments, the Dolphins this year is make it or break it. Either they are going to win 10 plus games. 10 is the minimum, right? The absolute minimum. And that's the floor, because that's what they won last year. Okay. However, it might take 11 or 12 games to make it in the playoffs with the way the AFC is shaping up and with the way the division is shaping up, right? And so it might not, 10 wins might not be good enough, right? So the expectation is 10 plus wins, be competitive within the division. You're going to have to be competitive within the division to get to that amount of wins. So that should go without saying, but then also make it to the playoffs. A lot of people are saying they have to win a playoff game. That is so much expectation to put on Tua and this team. It's astounding to me. But either they do that and then everything's all good, or they don't do that. And I'm telling you, if they don't do that, Stephen Ross, I mean, again, I'm like 95% sure Stephen Ross is going to fire somebody. He's going to fire somebody. But my guess is it's going to be both Brian Flores and Chris Greer. He's going to do a full hard reset. But anyway, and then likely, if they don't do it sometime this year, then likely go after Deshaun Watson. Because if they fail this year, it's going to be in part because Tua fails or he gets injured or something along those lines, right? And so if they were to go 10 or 6-10, for example, like I think they're gonna, then that means Tua didn't have a very good year. He certainly didn't take the giant step forward that people are expecting he's going to take. And there's going to be serious questions at the quarterback position. So I could very likely see Stephen Ross being like, all right, Flores Greer, you're out. We're going to go get Deshaun Watson. We're going to yet again fucking sell the farm, trade the farm away, and go get Deshaun Watson. And then the new regime, whoever he brings in, is going to have to deal with that fucking mess. And be expected to, get it together within 3 years. Okay, I guess, but I mean, it's mind-boggling to me because it's just such a disaster and a dumpster fire. But either they're gonna succeed or they're not gonna succeed. And there really isn't much of a middle ground here. That line, that middle ground is super thin. because of the expectations people are putting on this team, man. And I think it's stupid, but we're going to see. We are going to see. All right, with that, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspectives. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns in the comment section. And, of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.